Here we are, letters. We get letters. Da 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 da. Once again, the lyrics are not that. I still, it's almost as if I didn't spend any time on the lyrics thinking about them.
Right. Yeah.
You'd think I was making it up as I go.
And at the same time, you rival Sondheim. So,
Well, yeah, there is a certain commiseration.
Commiseration.
I always wanted to be a jingle writer. Did I ever tell you that? That's how I started out.
That sounds like something Kramer would say.
I
always wanted to be a jingle writer, Jerry.
Jerry, did you know that, Jerry?
Oh, man. Well,
I changed my name when I was a kid. I changed it to John Jacob Jingle Writer Smith. A lot of people don't know that. I couldn't even keep that one. That is a terrible dad joke.
That was really something. That was
bad.
Be recorded.
Right, no more jingles, Carson. Stop singing jingles.
These will forever be preserved to history.
Yes, correct. Yeah, that's a frightening thought that anybody 100 years from now could pull us out and go, "What was wrong with that guy?" We were supposed to take him seriously as our teacher. Anyway, letters. Yeah, today is the day we're going to respond to our listeners who have been, periodically sending us their comments about the work, but also questions that they may have following up from specifics that we. So here we are, episode 5.
Yep. And this will be a recurring kind of episode format. So
yeah,
please feel free to send us any questions, because it's great to get feedback on what's understood, what's not.
Everybody who listens to our podcast, please feel free to send us your comments. Like, you may say, "Hey, you said that, and here's my take on it," or, "Hey, you said that, and here's my question about it."
Right.
So we're going to make this a regular feature. Maybe, we'll go 4 or 5 episodes and then do one of these.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we go. Episode 5. We respond to your letters. It should not be acting training. It should be actor training.
Am I a good actor?
Like me doing. It's not a Meisner podcast.
There it is.
The first letter that I wanted to read to all of you is not about acting. This is why I wanted to start by reading this. This is from a former student of mine who his heading is to us is Lessons from Acting Beyond Acting, which we absolutely loved when we read it. It's a little long, but I'm going to, I think it's important to hear all of it. He says, "I am not sending a question, but rather wanted to take the opportunity to let you both know that though my journey ended up going down a path I would never have expected during those days back when I was studying, the lessons we learned and the skills we developed learning Meisner absolutely translate beyond the stage, film, and art. I now work for a large global commercial insurance broker and have been in that space for nearly 22 years. Though I know that the school and Kevin didn't intend to train future corporate professionals, looking back, and especially after listening to the podcast, I realize that much of my success in this space comes down to the simple ability to actively listen to people. I work with many highly intelligent and hardworking people, many of whom always wanted to be in business, finance, insurance from a young age. A large part of the space I have been in during my years has revolved around sales. Where I see so many of my peers fall short is their ability to actively engage with the client across the table, truly listen to what their needs are, respond to those needs in an honest way, and to be open to truly wanting to provide them support. For me personally, where I may lack in skills related to corporate finance, I make up for it in that I can sit in a room with people who do have a stronger skill set, listen to what they're saying, process it, and respond without fear of looking foolish. I definitely owe my years to my training for that." And then this is his last paragraph. "Certainly there are expectations in a conference room versus a rehearsal space that necessitates putting up a certain face or present yourself in a certain way that stymies a lot of that freedom that you get as an actor. But at the end of the day, the work I do is still very much a relationship business. to come from a place of living each day with an open heart, understanding what true passion and being passionate is, as well as that ability to listen and respond, has been a foundation for me.
Mm.
Isn't that great?
That's amazing.
Amazing. So we assume that we are training actors for the profession, right? We have a high standard and we hold them to it. However, there are two things that happen. Sometimes we train people for the profession, and like this guy, they go out and they find themselves in different vocations. You know how many letters of recommendation I've written to former students who are going to law school or social work, right? I get, after 5, 6, 10 years, I'll get a letter from a former student saying, I'm switching my passion. I still have a passion for acting, but I want to go into schools and or whatever, social work, or I want to be a lawyer, which more than you'd think. People who train in acting go to law. So the other thing that happens is that when we train actors, they don't go into the profession. They go into the area that we talked to Eli Pauly about. They might find themselves using their theater training in ways that help people.
Right.
We help people to become actualized. We help them to fully realize what they want to be as human beings, not training them to be actors. We're helping them to be the teacher they want to be, or the social worker they want to be, or even the person they want to be. Like when I used to go into schools and work with young people, middle school kids or high school kids, I was helping them to be the person they want to be.
Well, it falls under that category of teaching theater versus teaching through theater, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's technically two ways of looking at it. TIE, which is theater in education, and DIE, which is drama in education, right? And so you might be teaching theater and all about theater, or you might be teaching through drama. Drama therapy. I've had a few of my former students ask me to write them a letter of records to go to a school for drama therapy. Really widens it and opens it. But I love that this guy, we're not saying names, by the way. We're not going to say the names of the letter writers because I'm not sure in terms of their privacy that you want us to say it. But this is an old, a really good friend and former student from quite a while ago. He was in like my second or third class ever. And for him to have rediscovered, he discovered our podcast. Yeah, that's making him go, oh shit, man, you're making me think about those days, but also how important the basic, lesson. Can you sit across from another person and really hear them? Yeah. Really listen to them and hear them. And how important is that when if somebody's buying insurance, man, they might be like, I don't know. Can I please articulate to you what my fears and concerns are? And this guy's going, I hear it.
Yeah.
And then he addresses it. Whereas other guys he works with, men or women that he works with, they may just be like, I sell insurance without the fact that there's somebody on the other end of that interaction.
Right. I mean, it's kind of funny because it's easy to kind of fall into the pit of, chasing the bottom line or the reward or commission or whatever it is in any profession, right? But
absolutely,
what this letter's saying is that it's not about the end goal. It's about the pursuing, right? It's the listening, the doing. It's like The Actor and the Target, the Declan Donnellan book,
Yeah.
It's always...
Hey, another book for everyone. Did we ever say that book? The Actor.
I think so. Maybe not. But yeah, The Actor and the Target is my personal favorite book on it.
Yeah. I told you, I've said that Declan Donnellan is a personal hero of mine, and he has a book called The Actor and the Target. It's just wonderful. So if you all out there are looking for your next book, maybe it's that one. Yeah, but really what we're saying is the road is the goal. There isn't any, any reward, any great reward waiting for you.
Right.
If you only go for that goal, when you get there, it'll be empty.
Yeah.
You will either have ill-gotten gains or you will go, I got it. But what did you do on the way there? Well, I just pushed everyone aside and grabbed a hold of that thing that I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Hey, not to get too lofty, but one of the very first plays ever written was Everyman, right? After the Greeks and the Romans, there was a bit of a dead period, and then in the Middle Ages, theater came back, and Everyman is an allegorical play, and the guy is dying, and he asks who will come with him to the grave, and they all say, not me, not me, you know, and the only one that goes with him is good deeds,
Good
right?
deed.
So he goes up to his riches. Hey, all the money I've earned, you want to come with me to the grave? No, thanks. And then at the end, he goes up to his good deeds that he did in his life. You want to come with me to the grave? Yeah. Yeah. You could take that to the grave with you, all the stuff you left behind and the way you've affected people, you know?
Yeah.
Part of what we love about our job is, so many of my former students are now teachers. I just love that I taught them something and they're teaching someone else. Like, pass it on,
Yeah.
Okay. Who was calling you, Car? Did everybody listening hear Carson's phone go off?
Yeah. It was my alarm.
Oh, it was an alarm.
That was my alarm. It was
What,
my
did you
alarm.
plan to wake up halfway into our podcast?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've been sleeping up till now and that alarm woke you.
Yeah. So my body made it to the podcast, but my mind's not here.
So your mind is ready to join now because of the alarm.
now. I'm actually going to listen to you now.
Oh, very good.
Well, this is a great thing to talk about next. We had a listener from the UK actually write to us. A really great question. He said, "What's your take on rehearsing moment-to-moment actions when you're on your own? Is it even possible, or do you think it risks leading to predetermined acting and a premeditated response instead of an experiential one? I'm trying to strike a line between crafting each pinch and ouch and shape a scene without closing myself off to what else the moment could be, which can be tricky without a scene partner. Lately, I've been wondering if the better approach is to focus more on the significance, meaning, or point of view behind each moment, rather than trying to rehearse the action itself." What a great question. Well, especially
It's a
for
great question.
today, because, you rehearse, 9 out of 10 auditions, you're in your living room or
You're in your living room.
apartment, whatever, so you are
Double-edged sword, right? You can audition for anything because you're home in your living room, but
Yeah.
you miss being in the room with people.
Also,
Kind of energy.
and also a lot of times, I have friends who I help do self-tapes, or myself, where the reader is also on FaceTime.
Yeah,
They're not even in the room with you.
that's
So you're
right.
really isolated. Yeah.
You're isolated. We'll talk, maybe we will have an episode where we talk about how do you work on Zoom, since there's so much of it these days, and how do you stay alive and spontaneous with FaceTime,
Right.
or on Zoom. The reader is not even in the room with you. Maybe we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we should acknowledge that our listener is in the UK.
Yeah.
Somebody from London is listening and asks a question, and it's a really good question. This is more complex than I can address right now, but here's the succinct version of it. My teacher Maggie used to say to us, "I promise you that the only thing you do on stage is listen and respond. Everything else is homework," right? You do all your homework, like this writer says, meanings, point of view, all of that is homework. You do that at home. You daydream on it. We'll talk about this in future. That says you pin things down. You implant meanings. You personalize, particularize, right? As if, all that stuff. You don't bring your homework on stage with you.
Mm.
So you do all that work at home, and then the only thing you do. And she used to say, "I promise, this is true. This fundamental is true from these early days of your first acting class all the way through to your My Lips to God's Ear, your Tony Award winning performance, or your Oscar performance. Right up until then, The only thing you do on stage or on set is listen and respond. Okay. So what we're talking about is the difference between homework and the work you do in rehearsal in the room. But the writer, this person who wrote this, I want to address that. I think there might be mixing up terminology the way we use terminology. He keeps referring to action, but we use actions differently than I think he might be. When he says, can you, rehearse or practice your actions at home? We say actions are interpersonal and it's what you're doing. It's a verb, what you're doing to, for, and off your partner, right? To compliment, to scold, to whatever. You can identify those actions at home, but I wouldn't practice them because your action is interpersonal. It's to, for, and off your partner. So what are you doing? You're practicing your action to air? Get in the room and see how you're being treated by your partner. The thing they're doing causes you to respond in the form of an action. Now, all of this, again, this is very complex and it's multiple lessons. Your actions are done in the room as you shape the play, the story with the director. So in answer to his question, I don't think you can be at home pre-planning your moment-to-moment work. You have to do your homework and trust that if you've done that homework and if it took, you come in the next day, you leave yourself alone, you let your partner happen to you. If your homework took, your partner will pull that behavior out of you, right? Your partner will pinch you so that you say, ouch. And ouch is in the form of behavior. So I think the bottom line to that question is no, I would not suggest that you sit at home working it all out in your head, right? I wouldn't pre-plan how a moment might go. You don't know how a moment might go, right? So here's where the Meisner technique at least takes a little trust, a lot of trust, and a lot of courage. You are going on stage not knowing what's going to happen out there.
Yeah.
Now, the lay person hears that and they freak out.
Right.
Because when I tell people, when I'm working with people who don't know acting, I'll say to them, why do actors memorize their lines? And they'll say, to remember them. But no, it's the opposite. They memorize their lines to forget them. And they go, you mean the actor goes on stage and doesn't know what they're going to say? I'm like, no, they have those lines memorized, but then they forget them. And when you put 100% of your attention on the sensual environment, 99% of the time that's your partner, but it could also be an object, any activity, right? The thing outside of you, your response to it is what pulls your behavior out of you. And if you're in a play, that behavior, more often than not, rides on a line of dialogue that's been memorized, but you don't go on stage to speak your first line. You go, there are no lines. I don't know what's going to happen out there. So I don't bring my pre-planned anything. I trust that I did my homework and I trust that my partner is going to be alive and present and happen to me. And when they do, my homework will be pulled out of me. But you never bring your homework on stage. That's why they call it homework. You do it at home.
Yeah.
Don't bring it into the room. I hope that answers that question, or at least
No, I
responds to it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Good question. No, not really. I mean, you kind of hit it. I think that, it's funny because I do think young actors especially, and I say this from experience, you want to show that you did your homework, right? But what profession is there that would you want to go to the doctor's office and hear the doctor rattle off all the medical terminologies he knows? Right. No, that would make you overwhelmed. He just has that information to help him in the moment. So he's not thinking about everything he learned in school. And I always love what you say, Kevin. And I think you're quoting somebody, but you always say, technique is technique for when you need it. All of it is there just for when you need it. Otherwise, forget about it.
Yeah. No, that's true. You have to assume
Yeah.
takes years. It takes years. But you assume that you have the habit of the technique. It's in there.
Right.
You don't walk around going, I have technique, I have technique. It just it's the skeleton
Yeah.
that supports.
And I think, this listener is asking, what's your take on rehearsing moment to moment actions on your own? Um, and if he's truly talking about like actioning a script, um, there's so many different ways to do that. And why I love that we call this, it's not a Meisner podcast, is because we're open to anything. And, I always talk about Philip Seymour Hoffman because he's my acting hero, but
He is your hero.
He would color his scripts. Like he didn't write out two verb, he would just color them. And for whatever reason, like this certain color made him feel a certain way. And that's how he did it. And that worked for him. It's not about that's how he did it, so you should do it too. I just think there's so many ways to get into something like that. And there's no right answer, because at the end of the day, it's art.
Yeah.
It's art. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing it. That's a great way of putting it. So to put this to bed, yeah, that listener, I hope they understand that when he says the word action, he may be using it differently than we do, but maybe not. I don't know. I would have to talk to him. And in fact, he has a second question that I think I'm going to answer directly. I'll write to him. But yeah, the bottom line is, should you be at home pre-planning, working things out? No, but yes, you should be doing your homework, but only to trust that it's in you and then forget about it.
Yeah.
Again, so much more complex than that. And as we go on with our episodes, we will talk about daydreaming and planting meanings and et cetera, but we're not there yet. We're not even there for actions. Actions are only when you're in a play.
Yeah.
Right. When you do if you do a Meisner exercise, an activity or whatever, there's no quote unquote actions that are worked out. You are doing things in order to achieve something. So they are, in a sense, actions, but you didn't plan them out at all.
Yeah.
One hopes. Cool.
Our next question is a two-hander.
Okay.
This listener, he asked, I'd love to hear a breakdown of a specific rehearsal moment or exercise that clicked, maybe from your own training, Kevin, or one of Carson's experiences.
Okay. You want to go first?
Yeah. When I first read this, the first thing that came to mind was an exercise I did with Kevin when I was 18, I guess, over Zoom during the pandemic, which is funny because I hadn't really thought about it in a long time. And I did this exercise with Kevin and a scene partner, a mirror exercise. And Kevin let us go for like 45 minutes or an hour, just mirroring each movement. And it got to a place where I didn't know if I was leading the movement or if I was responding to the movement. It got to a place where we were just synchronized and doing it together. And I remember after that was over, it kind of rattled what I thought acting to be for the next few weeks. I couldn't stop thinking about it because it wasn't listening or responding. It was both at the same time. And I was like, oh, that's it's like playing a didgeridoo, where you're breathing in and playing the instrument at the same time. It's and it's not about you. And then in kind of a trippy way, it wasn't about the scene partner either. It was just about the task. And that was a really transformative experience for me.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, that's first of all, to do the mirror exercise on Zoom, that's nuts.
I know, right?
But you two did it, and it was extraordinary. I remember. So the two things I would take from that is when you say there came a moment where I didn't know if I was leading or following, there comes a moment where all that goes away. And it isn't you and your partner, it's you and your partner. Like you and your partner are separate things, but eventually you merge, and the two of you, out of that comes another entity.
Yeah.
Two of you become one entity sharing this energy, And so we call that, well, Viola Spolin called it follow the follower.
Mm.
And there is a bit of that in acting. Follow the follower. You go, well, I'm not leading, but neither is my partner. Well, what are you doing? I'm following them. Well, what are they doing? They're following.
But
Follow the follower.
that's not even just acting, that's life. I mean, you don't have to, I mean, when you look at everybody's actions, from your neighbor or the bodega guy to like literally the political world stage, everybody's just kind of following the follower. It may be a different follower for each person, but we're all just trying to put the right foot forward.
But and if you could do it, because by the way, follow the follower could be a very, very dangerous thing if
Yeah.
you're just like the other day when Will made that joke about it being a cult. Is this a cult? Because everybody's just following. Well, I hope it's not a cult, because I don't think I'm leading.
Mhm.
Like I like to think when I'm teaching, I'm not leading. I'm setting up an environment where then I get the fuck out of the way, and then you in the environment through your um through your experience of quote unquote touching the environment.
Sure.
I don't mean literally touching with your hands. I mean engaging with the environment. You will emerge and have learned something maybe, and even if we don't call it learn something, you will have progressed in some way. But
Absolutely.
I hope I'm not standing in front of you telling you what to do, and then you do it and you think you learned it, right? We mean follow the follower in a positive way. I wish people could do it in real life, but they don't, because somebody always emerges and says, "I'm the leader," you know? So follow the follower is what happens when you get into that zone. And we've all felt, I hope we've all felt it, if we're in rehearsal or even if we're just in class, we're working in a way where it clicks and you go, man, we were in the zone there. Yeah, because by getting out of the way, we let nature be the most important thing in the room. It tells us, and we just say yes to it. We go with it, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I would take out of what you said is when people know the Meisner technique, they go, well, Meisner said, listen and respond, right? Listen and respond.
Yeah.
Why is that important? Because he didn't say listen, then respond. You don't listen and then respond. Listen and respond. It's cyclical and it's happening all at the same time. Right now, hopefully this may make its way to YouTube or some visual thing where people can see us. But right now, when I was saying that, Carson was nodding his head, meaning he was, quote unquote, talking to me. He was answering me by nodding his head. He didn't use language or words to respond to me, but I was saying, listen and respond, which means it's cyclical. When I was saying that, Carson was shaking his head. He was listening and responding simultaneously. He was hearing me and answering me at the same time. All right. So this helps any Meisner trained actors. You're not there to listen, listen, listen. Then when your partner's done, you go, and now I respond. No, you're off the impulse if you do that.
Yeah.
Right? What happens when you're in a play and your partner has a monologue of 10 lines, but after the third line, they said or did something that pinches you? Do you hold on to your impulse until they're done talking and then you talk? No, that would imply acting is talking and talking is acting. I have to wait to talk. Why don't you respond in the moment, but you don't talk because you don't have a line until they're done? After their 10th line is your line. But are you saying you're nothing until they're done talking and then you talk? That implies that talking is acting.
Yeah.
But your partner can say something to you and you don't have a line. You can still respond behaviorally, non-verbally. All right. You're never not listening and responding. Right. So again, if people listening can take this away, it's not listen, then respond. It's listen and respond.
Yeah.
Okay? So when you did that mirror exercise, the only thing we were saying is you and your partner become one entity.
Yeah.
You guys are moving at the same time together. You go, I don't know who's initiated this movement. But your partner would say the same thing to you. Who initiated this? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Now imagine if you could extrapolate that to acting in a scene where you and your partner are like, you're not literally mirroring each other. That's a mistake when you're acting a scene, but you go, we're in this together. You know? Yeah, this is another thing that comes up sometimes. Young actors, or even older people who don't understand theater, they go, conflict. You go, well, yeah, it is, but the playwright's responsible for that. The two actors are in cooperation to create the characters in conflict. So if you and I are in a scene, you and I as actors, we agree that we're cooperating and collaborating with each other to create for the audience that our characters are in conflict. Okay. Cool.
It's great. He also just a quick, short little question here. Following back on that first one, the same listener wrote, I'm curious if either of you have noticed any shifts in your own point of view since starting this podcast. Has the act of recording and reflecting changed how you see your work?
That's a good question, right? Because you and I we're thinking about our work as we do this.
Right.
It might not seem like it, dear listeners, but Carson and I plan a little bit. It doesn't seem like we plan these. Like we just those idiots planned what they just said.
Yeah,
well, no, we don't plan.
You may not realize it, but Kevin and I have the capacity to think. You know?
Yeah, we go, hey, what should our episode be about? But like all acting, though, we do have like bullet points, and then we go, well, fuck it, whatever comes up in the moment, we'll respond. You know. But it has been interesting for you and I to delineate. You know, listen, I've been thinking lately, this is some Meisner podcast. We haven't done any fucking Meisner yet, Carson. This is some Meisner. People at home are going, what?
Well, I think that's the point. I think that's actually the point, though. You know?
Yeah, I think so.
And we'll get there, but it's also, we're not trying to sell anybody anything. You know?
No. And so we call this not Meisner, but it is Meisner. And yet here we are. And this is the 8th one that we've recorded. It's the 5th episode, but the 8th one we recorded, right? Because we have guests come. So we've done 8 of these and we haven't really articulated the Meisner technique. We've been discussing the fundamentals.
Right. But I mean,
Meisner, the foundation.
I mean, I think when I first started working with you, Kevin, it was, I mean, you and I broke down quotes for the first couple of months before I ever did it.
That's right.
So I think it's important.
Yeah, when you and I worked together, it was like an hour to just love theater and acting and be passionate about it and share with each other things that we, like, you would tell me some Philip Seymour but they whatever, and I'd be like, oh my God, that's brilliant, you know.
Yeah.
Or we would have a quote and say, this is what we're going to do for an hour. We're going to take this apart.
Yeah.
And you and I, we kind of do this still. We have an acting partner. Carson has a friend who's a really good actor. The two of them together, my God. But we always get together and we work on stuff just to work on it. Right now we're working on Long Day's Journey and Tonight. And what do those two guys do? They show up and we might spend the first 20 minutes just talking about stuff where if anybody heard, they'd be like, that's a rehearsal for Long Day's Journey. We go, yeah, yes, it is.
It is. Yeah.
Whether we're being silly and funny and talking about the day's events, that's still, in my opinion, part of what we're doing to consider humanity.
Yeah.
You know? But sometimes, what was the thing we took apart forever? Remember Long Day's Journey? Like, how did you get?
Are you talking about the scene we did before Long Day's Journey or a different?
No, the one we just did, Long Day's Journey, we talked for like an hour about, because of the time period. We're like, how did they get milk? Or so
right.
That?
Yeah. We like had a whole hour just talking about the milkman.
Yeah.
And that it gets referenced in a stage direction on one page.
Yeah.
But it just gets you into the world of the play. And
we spent an hour on a stage direction. It wasn't even but we got to talking about, well, when is this play? It's 1912 or something like that. I think I can't remember. But we were like, it's before the war, the first war. Like we start to put ourselves in time and space and location and all that. And you go, is that a rehearsal? Well, yeah, because it affects behavior.
And the big revelation and I'm just sharing this because I think it just speaks to the importance of doing this, is the big revelation about talking about, the milkman or whatnot was, I think for my scene partner and I, who are both, uh, uh, Gen Z, young actors, if someone knocks on my door, I'd be like, what the hell's going on here? I'd be kind of scared, because everybody forewarns you over text or whatnot, So the big revelation for that was, oh, even at home, anybody could knock on your door at any time. And that's
Yeah.
silly, but that's not the way we live now. That's just not
Y-
how it is.
And that 100%. And that translates to behavior.
Yeah.
Like Carson's like, there is no reason on earth now in 2025 that somebody would just knock on my door.
Yeah.
I would get a text ahead of time or would be expecting it.
Yeah.
But back then, someone could knock on your door.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it would be
It could be a neighbor just coming to visit. You go, well,
yeah.
today it would be like, well, we just text each other back and forth. Nobody comes
Yeah.
to visit, have a seat and talk.
Or, hey, I'll be there in 15 minutes. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
it's kind of absurd. Even waiting now, if I met someone yesterday and I kind of had this internal battle of, do I need to text them that I'm outside or should I just sit here and wait like a normal human being?
Like it normally. Yeah. The concept of waiting.
Yeah. That
So,
kind of,
but to address the question, like, has doing this podcast made me anyway, change the way I've thought about anything? The answer really is no, but it is making me have to revisit the sequence
yeah.
of Meisner, because technically the sequence, it begins with repetition, right? Well, we've done 8 of these and we haven't done repetition yet. So we will. I mean, it's coming within the next
We're
few.
planning it now.
Yeah, we're planning now that you and I may have a conversation about repetition, and then we hope that we can demonstrate repetition, and that would go on YouTube because you kind of have to see it.
Absolutely.
If 2 people are going to repeat, you got to see them. For our listeners who can see, right? There are people who can't see, and they will listen. But for most people who do have the gift of sight, you can watch on YouTube that people very subtly shift when they're repeating, and so we will get to that.
Yeah.
But I can't really say that I'm thinking differently about the work because we're doing this, but it does remind me.
Yeah. Well, and I was just going to say, you can listen to it because you've heard that story that Meisner himself would put his hands over his face while people were going, just to focus on the audio aspect of it.
No, listen, and also my teacher used to say you can work off somebody over the phone.
Yeah.
You don't have to stare at somebody to be. When I say visual, I don't mean you're staring at them. You can. Meisner wasn't stupid. He put a door in the exercise. He literally put a barrier between the 2 actors, so that you're on the other side and you can hear them and feel them before you see them.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
you open the door and you have that first moment. But sometimes they're knocking in a way that the knock itself is happening to you. You don't even know who it is and you don't see them. So yes to all of that.
well, I mean, I was in, where was it? Oh, the gym. I was at the gym the other week and this big guy was just getting heated with his AirPods in over the phone, and he said something along the lines of like, I don't care that you're in a coffee shop or something. But it was just funny because I'm just thinking about the other person also in a heated conversation, but having to be in a coffee shop, like acting like a normal person.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's also crazy for you to hear one side of that argument. Man, are they in it? You only hear the one side.
I know, right? I would say for me, my point of view has not shifted, but has been concretized rather. I think partially because of my age and where I'm at in my life as an actor. Because I did Meisner for 2 years and I went and did some other techniques rather. Always had kind of Kevin and the Meisner pedagogy as a constant throughout that time, but now I'm able to this has helped me kind of shape my own technique in a way. And coincidentally, I found that my auditions or self tapes have actually improved since doing this podcast because I think letting go of technique in a way, which is kind of fun.
Great.
Um,
That's great. great.
because it's forcing me to go back to kind of, the fundamentals. Like I learned all these kind of bells and whistles, which are good, but at the end of the day, it's a lot simpler than it has to be. And,
No.
I've been training for like 5 years, and I have a lot of voices in my head. And so this is just this podcast has helped me kind of, it's just listening and responding and fun.
Yes.
Like it's supposed to be fun, you
Of
know?
course.
And
Of course.
not supposed to be
Let go.
yeah.
Well, what's important about that is that it's not your job to demonstrate your technique or your
Right.
homework. It's not your job to prove that you've done your homework. Hey, look, I did my homework and here it is. Like, why do you think the audience won't get it unless you feed it to them on a spoon,
Yeah. Exactly.
Prepare, 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 forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or on the other end, the Sean Penn quote. What was that? Who was he
About he was talking about that great Dennis Hopper.
Yeah. Prepare,
Dennis,
prepare, become.
yeah. When Dennis Hopper died, they asked a bunch of people to talk about him, and they went on and on with these paragraphs about Dennis Hopper, which were all great and true. But Sean Penn's his quote was prepares, 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 becomes. He becomes the thing,
Yeah.
the character,
Yeah.
Really, that's good.
Our next question is from another listener, and he wrote a very very engaging question. It goes like this. He said, "I've been thinking a lot about freedom and form, specifically pertaining to repeating a show multiple times a week during a run. Tadashi Suzuki, who's a famous movement pedagogue, in his book Culture is the Body, says something along the lines of younger, more inexperienced actors think it's sufficient to show up to work and allow their performance to vary as their impulses change day to day. Older actors, however, tend to understand more of craft, seeing that playing in the same form and structure will give them the deepest sense of freedom because they're not thinking about what they are doing. Sometimes I take issue with the, quote, previously fashioned forms and patterns because it makes performance separate from rehearsal. That makes me the younger actor Suzuki is talking about. But why should the actor not continue to search and make it different every time, even once the show is open? Obviously, when it comes to Suzuki's aesthetic, it demands a rigor of precise repetition night to night, because his work is so visual and stylized. I've worked with directors that are that precise in their own vision and ask for a certain response to something every time because it tells the story they are looking for. Does that mean technique then simply allows the actor to discover that reaction freshly every night, even though it has been premeditated by the director?
It's a really good question. That's a thoughtful actor right there, a thoughtful young actor.
Very.
He thought this stuff through,
Yeah.
It seems like what they're really asking is about working with a director. Like, can the actor maintain a certain autonomy and agency, or do they have to just sort of robotically do what the director's asking of them? I think to break this down is, first and foremost, if you're working with a great director who has a sharp vision, it is your job to find your way into that vision.
Yep.
If you're working with a bad director, I can't help you. Yeah, you've all worked with bad directors. You go, I have a bad director who's trying to, shoehorn me into this thing. Well, a bad director is a bad director, whether they have a strong concept or not.
Yeah.
Listen, sometimes worse than a bad director is a non-director.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you'd rather have a bad director. At least they're clear about what they're bad at.
Yeah.
But a fucking these directors who you go, I've worked with them for 4 weeks in rehearsal. They've never said a damn, they've never made a choice. They've never responded, So that's different. If you're working with a bad director who's trying to shoehorn you in, I can't help you. You're on your own. You have your technique, and you do the best you can within that technique. But if you have a strong director, oh fuck, it went right out of my head. What, Carson? Who was in Breaking Bad? What's that actor's name?
Bryan Cranston.
Bryan Cranston. by all accounts, a really good actor, right?
Yeah.
Well, he did Network on Broadway with Ivo van Hove.
Right.
Notice how I remember the name of the director, but not the actor.
Right. Well,
because I'm a director.
Wasn't one of your students in that?
Yes, Camila.
Yeah.
I think Camila was in Network with them. Ivo van Hove is I want to say Dutch director. I might be making that up. But he has a very, very particular style.
Belgian.
Belgian. Thank you for clearing that up. So we don't lose Dutch listeners.
Well, we're number one in Austria, and we're probably going to sweep Europe pretty soon.
We're going to sweep Europe. So even if I made a mistake about where Ivo van Hove is from, the Europeans will still back us up on this.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, great Belgian director, Ivo van Hove. Very particular, moves you around in a really, like visual and this kind of whatever. And they said, somebody asked Bryan Cranston, are you the kind of actor that works in an Ivo van Hove kind of way? And Bryan Cranston said, I am for this project. I thought that was amazing. I mean, if anybody has the right to say, I have my way of working and it's this, it's Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
But he said, no, I'm working with a director and this is what they want of me. I'm flexible and fluid and malleable. And I know my process. I can adjust it to what that director is asking of me.
Yeah. Well, Bryan Cranston is also great because he'd been in stuff forever. So I don't want to say got his start late, but he didn't become a celebrity until much later. It's like he was a bona fide, working class actor. So yeah. I love that about him. And he's kept that here, which is really
cool. And he'll be excited to work on the next thing and whatever that is, that I'll do. I bring myself to that process.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the job of the actor is to say yes to the director's vision, but also to bring their personal self to it all, My friend and a former colleague, Christopher Cartmel, told me once that he was acting in a play and the director kept wanting him to stand in a certain place in a certain way. And he fought it a little bit. He tried to find his way. He just couldn't. But once they got into tech, he realized that he was being backlit and his shadow kind of created the grave that either his character or somebody was going to go into. Him standing the way he was and where he was, backlit, put a shadow on the floor that created the image of a grave or something like that. Christopher, if you're listening, maybe I said that wrong, but I just thought that was amazing. He was like, I fought it, and then I was like, all right, I got to find my way in. Then later he goes, oh, this is brilliant. I get to be the shadow on the floor. Whatever. You don't always know. You don't always know. Now, to address, though, one thing that the writer said, repeating a performance. You don't repeat your performance. You relive it, right? Mm-hmm. So your job is to craft in such a way that no matter how you're pinched on stage night to night to night, you will respond experientially in that moment, which means you are living the thing. You're not repeating what you did last night. You sure as hell are not repeating what you did in rehearsal, right? You're reliving it every night, re-experiencing it. How? Well, because if Carson and I are working on something, we've, 8 shows a week for a year. How do I keep that fresh? Well, I didn't do any previous shows, right? This is the show, this one. And when I'm working off Carson, all of a sudden tonight, he lifted his eyebrow and he never did that before.
Yeah.
So if you're working and leaving yourself alone, you're going to do behaviors that you don't even know you're doing. But I'm on the other end of those behaviors. So maybe you lift your eyebrow and I'm responding to that.
Yeah.
So are we saying the same dialogue night after night? Yeah. But we don't think of it as dialogue. The only thing dialogue is language, sounds on top of breath, arranged in a way that we agree is language.
Yeah.
You and I are speaking English, but there are other languages, and those people agreed that those sounds arranged in that order, that's their language.
Yeah.
So why do we have it? To make sense, to be rational, to understand, to be logical and rational, and to be able to point at something and call it that thing, and then we all agree it's that thing, right? Well, you know, you and I have had this conversation. You'll go insane with this one. How do I know that you see orange the way I see orange? This color is orange. You might see it completely different.
Yeah, it's true.
We name it orange or red or whatever. Yeah. How the hell do we know?
Yeah.
It's just words. We don't care about the words. We care about the impulse.
Yeah.
And the impulse then has a breath that comes with it. And this is Peter Brook, right? First comes the impulse, then comes the breath, then comes the sound that comes out of your mouth in relation to behavior. And that sound is shaped through, what eventually is words. Right. The words come last.
Well,
so
and
go
ahead. No, I was just going to say this kind of speaks to the same question. It's just a little different. But rather, how do you relive it every single night? Right. There's part A of the question, which is how do you technically do that? And then there's part B of how do you stamina wise do that?
Oh my gosh.
I always remember this interview that Ian McKellen gave where he said, he's at a point in his career where he could phone it in if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Like he's technically savvy enough to do that. But he says, if I'm tired, I'll peek out from behind the curtain, which I find really, really, really cute because he's Ian McKellen peeking out from behind.
It's very endearing to picture 80-something-year-old Ian McKellen peeking.
Sure, Ian McKellen peeking out. And he finds a kid and he reminds himself that he was 8 or however old when his mom took him to see Hamlet or whichever play. And he goes, it's my duty to not phone it in because that could be someone who falls in love with this.
That's beautiful. Listen, we said this in one of our previous podcasts that this is the night that audience is there.
Right.
And it took something for them to get there. They had to get a babysitter. They had to work their way through the subway system or whatever. And they're there. That's the night they're there. So you don't have to go, I've done this so many times. Yeah, there's that famous story about Joe DiMaggio. He would bust it on every play.
Yeah.
And they go, why do you work so hard out there in the outfield, chasing down every ball? You're Joe DiMaggio. You don't have to do. He goes, because there's somebody in the stands who's never seen me play. They came to see Joe DiMaggio. They're in the one time in their life they get to go to the ball game because he's known as a great baseball player. They don't want to see me loafing around,
Yeah, same with Kobe Bryant. He would say people saved up for a year to afford a ticket to a Laker game. Why would I sit out for rest?
This is the one game they're at. Yeah. Hey, by the way, the other answer to that is why would you bust it every play? You're Joe DiMaggio. The answer is that's how I'm Joe DiMaggio. What do you mean? That's why you're saying you're Joe DiMaggio, the guy who busted on every play.
That's why you're Ian McKellen. You know what I mean? Because
of course, you're the guy that can peek out at your age and find a kid.
Yeah.
And go, I know this is why we do this.
Yeah. Sure.
So I don't know if I've answered the question. I think I might have answered the question about a director, that you might work with a director who has a very clear, because sometimes the director they are not necessarily directing the actors, they're directing how the entire production lands on the audience, right. Conceptualist directors or, I don't know, somebody like Julie Taymor who mixes actors with puppets. It's like, look, there's a way to be in that. You got to create a world where there are live actors and puppets. It's got to feel like it's all one world. So they are asking something of you. And your job is to be of service there, But you can also keep it spontaneous every night. Here's the last thing I'll say about that. Actors work their whole lives to get into a Broadway play. And then the play runs for a long time. And they go, oh no, I'm stuck doing the same play 8 times a week for a year or 2 years. Do you know how many actors wish they had remember that old joke? How do you piss off an actor? Give him a job. Once you get the job, you're like, "Oh, there's always complaining." I go, why are you in a creative profession? Go work in a bank if you
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
complain about the hours and all that. So, you know, I've literally had people write to me jokingly, "Get me out of this. They're in a play. Get me out of this." I'm like, Okay, gladly." You know how many people want the fucking job you have right now? Come on, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Where are we?
We got two more questions if we have
Okay.
time.
How are we doing on time? Should we
Maybe do
be
one.
okay? Yeah. Are we boring the people at home is what I'm saying?
I think we were boring them from minute one. Um,
Oh, great.
this is a good question, and it speaks to especially younger actors today. Um, Speaking to technology is from a different listener. Um, Speaking to technology, I remember hearing stories of actors from the 70s that avoided talk shows and were even weary of doing interviews in print because they didn't want to risk overexposure as well as protect their anonymity. The theory being anonymity would translate to public buy-in when watching the actor inhabit vastly different characters. With the advent of social media, that model has, to a certain degree, been obliterated. There is almost an obligation to publicly expose and promote oneself. I was wondering if Carson has reflections on that. Does he have thoughts on social media in particular as a tool? Is it a blessing or a curse for a young artist? Wow.
That's great. That one's for you. Let me just say this before you answer it. It's absolutely true. Maybe not so much these days, but in my day, you could always tell a real actor when they were on a talk show. They don't like talking about themselves or
Yeah,
their work. So
right.
when you get a real actor and the talk show is a formula and they're like, "Hey, blah, blah, blah about your new movie." They get weird and mumbly and shy. Like a real actor doesn't want to be on a talk show talking about themselves or their project, and they really don't want to talk about their process. They don't want to
Right.
give away how they do what they do. It might be, I think this writer might be onto something. That it
Absolutely.
might be different now that everybody just shows up and they're like, "Here's me," and
Absolutely. I mean, the world's gotten a lot smaller because of it. I mean, for starters, you're listening to a podcast where Kevin Kittle is on it. Like the world.
yeah, something is wrong. The people who know me, everyone I've talked to, they're like, "What the hell happened? How are you on a podcast?"
I mean, so it's definitely a different world. I mean, when I read this, I was thinking about, I forget who said it, um, but someone was some actor or comedian or something, I forget who, was talking to Denzel Washington, and maybe it was Steve Harvey, actually, now that I think about it. And when Steve Harvey like walked in a room, everybody was like cheering and like trying to like shake his hand and hug him and stuff and talking to him like, "Hey Steve, how are you?" But then when Denzel walked in, it was like very revered and like, "Hello, Mr. Washington." And Steve went up to Denzel and said, "What was that about? Why do they treat you like you're so?" And Denzel said, "Well, they don't see me every night in their living room on a television. They pay on the weekend to come see me on the big screen."
Right. They
Eh,
don't know that they don't feel that they know him.
right. They feel like they look up to him, literally. Um, Whereas, on television, this was also probably 10 or 15 years ago. So I think that's definitely a train of thought. And I think it still exists. I mean, I'm thinking about Timothy Chalamet, who I don't know if he has a social media. I think he got rid of it. But I also think that's a luxury he can do now because he's this A-lister, uh, very talented actor, but also a celebrity, right? But he definitely had one. So I think that's interesting. Like it's now once you get to that point, people will get rid of it to kind of play into that anonymity aspect
Yeah.
because it's
Yep.
excited. And when you don't see someone that much, you're more interested. And so I definitely think it's just different. I think it's different now. I think they both still exist, but it's different. I personally think social media is a curse. I'm on it. The Meisner podcast is on it.
Yeah.
That's also a blessing too. I mean, I see all sorts of actors who I typically wouldn't have kept up with through there, and we maintain a connection through that. And so I'm always kind of aware of what people are up to that I know that I wouldn't necessarily know otherwise. So it is a blessing. And like, I see all sorts of, this is coming to off Broadway. This is doing this here. This is that. So there's a lot of information to be taken in from it. There's other great podcasts or interviews that you can find through there. I mean, we're hoping that actors find us through there. So there's a great benefit to it. But I think in terms of vanity and being a young actor who's oversaturated with rejection, then trying to like compare yourself on the internet is not good at all. And Jasmine Carmichael talks about that in terms of mental health and like staying on the straight and narrow in episode 4, part 2, if you want to check that out. But I think that social media has changed the way of the world. Obviously, that's not a very complex, nuanced answer, but there was a story that came out maybe a month ago about Maya Hawke, who I find really talented.
Me too.
But is also, and I think she's great, but she's also the daughter of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke, right? So Maya Hawke, who has her parents on her side, but is also a very talented actress in her own right, was going to delete social media on a film set. She's like, I've had enough of it. The director, who she didn't name, but was apparently a big time director, said, don't do that. And I'll show you why. And he pulled up a chart on his phone for the next movie he was getting financed that the producers gave him, where the cast needed to meet a quota of followers.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So that's fascinating to me. That's Maya Hawke.
But we're hiring actors based on the followers that they have on social media.
But I think it's just eyes. I think there's so much content out there. Bill Burr has a great story where he says his dad didn't even know he was in a movie with Al Pacino until 10 years after it came out. And he was like, that speaks to how much content's out there. My own dad didn't know it. And I think it's just people want to make sure their stuff is seen. And that's just the way it is. And I'm not saying go out there and like make TikToks to get your follower count up. I think your art, Kevin always preached this and it's always stuck with me. At the end of the day, your artistry should speak for something, but there is a little bit of game to be played in that regard. But I also think if you double down on your artistry, the rest will follow. Like if you build it, they will come. That's my take.
No, that's really, why are you so articulate? You're only like 9 years old. Carson turns 10. I think his birthday soon. He's going to be 10.
Yeah, I'm going to be 10.
Yeah. That was great. Thanks for that. Yeah, I always, again, the joke when people go, how are you on social media? It's because I always trash it.
Yeah.
I really do think it's the death of it. It'll be part of the machine that's taking us down.
All right.
It's all going to be over pretty soon. But here's where I get, I can get pretty fucking cynical and nihilistic, but
yeah.
My wife and I always go, we didn't think we would be here for it. Like we could see it, that the world is ending, democracy's ending, the whole world is ending. We didn't think we'd be here to see it. We thought it would happen after we died, but it's happening now. I think social media is a big part of it.
I think so too. And I think in terms of humanity and being an artist and looking at every individual as this beautiful thing. And because if you don't have a love for humanity, your acting's going to be terrible. You can't become cynical, or else what do you have to act about? Like what are you trying to do with your art? So I think if you get into if you fall into the silo of social media where you're only seeing things about things you already agree with and things you already know, and you're not using it as a tool, that's where it becomes that will kill your artistry.
Yeah.
That's where it's a blessing and a curse, because you have to treat it as a tool, not as a form of you can't treat it as the world, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So use it as a tool to keep up with things. And, you have to, I guess, promote yourself, I guess, in a way.
Well, listen, the truth is, you and I just now, when I was like, where's Hugo von Hover from? You looked it up.
Yeah, exactly.
And you went, he's Belgian. Right in the moment, you found that information. So, and I do that all the time when I'm working with actors. and we're devising a piece or something, I'll say, somebody find for me this information. Then we'll look it right up on their phone.
Yep.
So it can be a helpful tool. I just worry that eventually we just hear the echo. It just becomes an echo chamber.
All right.
This is the way the world ends.
Yeah.
Not with a bang, but a whimper. It just kind of, we just let it,
Well,
All right. When the fuck did this become a political podcast, Carson?
well, I think it's more than political.
You can't separate the two, I don't think.
No, you can't.
Art and politics.
Let's end it up. Let's finish it up with this short little question. Do I have an answer?
Hopefully it'll be a short little answer.
Yeah, exactly. What skill or ability present in more experienced actors do you wish was available to an actor just starting?
Oh, well, that's anybody would say this, a sense of ease.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody would say this. It takes forever for a young actor to chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
That's the laboratory terminology. Will you chill the fuck out? Young actors think that they have to pump it up, or they think that they have to, have tortured lives and whatever. Nobody gives a shit, dude.
All right.
The older, one of my mentors, Israel Hicks, God bless him, no longer with us, but he was one of my mentors, and he used to say the difference between the older actor and the younger actor backstage before curtain. The younger actors are stomping around, getting their energy up, running up the walls and shit, and the older actor is sitting in a chair with his feet up on the table in the green room reading the New York Times or something, and then 5 minutes is called and the older actor just goes, okay, shakes her head, and the younger actor's like, 5 minutes, and then places is called. That older actor just folds their paper up. They go to their place for places. They take a breath and they're dropped in.
Yeah.
And they drop into the circumstance and where they just came from and what happened and how they feel about it. And then either the curtain goes up and they enter, or the scene's already happening and they hear their cue and they enter. A sense of ease. Let it all go and trust that it flows through you.
Yep.
Right? Hey, speaking of Denzel Washington, I told you this one, right?
Yeah.
Edwards Vick directed him multiple times, and he said about Denzel Washington, most actors, when you call action, their blood pressure goes up. He said, I swear to God, with Denzel, when you call action, his blood pressure goes down. Because he isn't building something up and holding on to it. He's letting go of the things that are getting in the way of the universe flowing through him.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, think about someone like him. I mean, he's this A-lister, larger than life figure dealing with all sorts of, business stuff, and he produces things. I'm sure when the only problem in his life is the scene and the one thing he's pursuing, it probably is a lot of fun,
He gets to go, oh, when they call action, I get to act, which is what I am, an actor.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think I love that question too, because I think I'm kind of just speaking to what you said about a sense of ease, but I think it's kind of paradoxical and funny, because I think what skill or ability that should be present, that more experienced actors have, that young actors should wish young actors had, is actually something that young actors are closer to in time, which is like their childlike thing. Yeah. That's the reason you fell in love with it. And then you fell in love with it and you're like, okay, I need to be awesome and perfect at this. So I need to treat it like it's a sport or a subject in school. But in reality, I think the more experienced actor gets back to the childlike thing. And I mean, Andrew Scott said that, like, he never really liked acting class because he didn't like being right or wrong about something. He liked just playing like he was a kid, Yeah. I think homework for actors listening should be get someone's National Theater Live account, the streaming service, borrow it, buy it for a month, and then don't, if you can't afford it, and watch Vanya, his one-man show where he plays all the characters in Vanya. Because that to me is like the epitome of what all actors should strive to have, and childlike play and ease. And
Underneath it all is a sense of play.
Yeah.
There's technique, there's meanings. He's done all his homework, but what's he doing up there? Play.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, cool.
Yeah. That's episode 5.
We respond to some letters.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, we look forward to episode 6.1, I guess, right? The next one will be episode 6, part 1. And we will begin the process of looking at the sequence of Meisner, the Meisner technique, a little bit close.
Yep. And keep writing to us, because we'll do this again.
Yes.
So meisnerpodcast@gmail.com.
Yay. Did I sound convincingly excited?
Yeah.
Yay.
It wasn't forced.
No.
You need to make a jingle for the outro.
Here we go. We're leaving now. Again, I'm not very good. That was someone else's song, right? Even that melody, I just stole it. Da, 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 da. That's a Bugs Bunny song, for fuck's sake. All right.
All right.
Love you, brother.
Toodles. Love you too, man.
See you next time.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram @Meisner Podcast.